Never Before in History: America's Inspired Birth by Gary Amos and Richard Gardner. The present book, Never Before in History, is a stirring call to reevaluate the founding of the United States. Its primary task is to teach us about the decisive role that Christianity played in the American founding. It rightly recalls that many of the leading political theorists admired by the founders were professed Christians. It rightly points out that the New England Puritans were already devoted to democratic government long before independence in 1776. It rightly argues that the founding principles are fully capable and compatible with Christianity. It rightly asserts that the separation of church and state spoken of by Jefferson did not mean that government should not promote sound religious opinions among the people. Above all, this book demonstrates that if religion is banned from the public life of the nation, Americans' history and traditions are unintelligible. There is no doubt that America is a Christian nation in the sense that the large majority of American citizens are and always have been Christians. But this book is careful to remind us that it is not true that America's principles are Christian in the sense that one must be a Christian to discover or believe in them. On the contrary, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and other founding documents of our nation all make it clear that one does not have to be a Christian to be an American. Scholars from America's most prestigious universities have long been telling us that we live under a godless constitution. It is not surprising that those hostile to religion would believe in a godless constitution. Such people pretend to believe in government neutrality between religion and interreligion, but it is almost always religion that loses out when the neutrality principle is applied in practice. Under the guise of the neutrality principle, the Supreme Court has ruled that children in public schools must be taught that human beings have evolved through a mindless, materialistic process from which the Creator is excluded. The same court forbids the teaching not only of the biblical account of creation, but even of any scientific evidence that points towards creation. The absurdity of this ruling is obvious on a moment's reflection. Creation is taught by our original founding document, the Declaration of Independence. Human beings are endowed by their Creator with the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Supreme Court has ruled in effect that it is unconstitutional to teach in public schools that the Declaration of Independence is true. What is so odd is that many Christians and traditionalists also accept the view that Americans' principles are hostile to Christianity. Never before in history rightly contests that claim. What we need to understand today is that there are two great truths about American original relation to Christianity. On the one hand, Christian theology, as it was understood in the English Whig tradition, strongly supports the basic ideas of the American Revolution. But the sacred rights of mankind are not knowable solely through the Christian tradition. Human reason, observing, and reflection on the basic facts of human nature also affirm that self-evident truths of the Declaration without an appeal to biblical revelation. The founders considered both of these sources, Christian revelation and law, natural law, divine in origin, and compatible with one another. In 1780, before an audience including the Governor, Senate, and House of Representatives of Massachusetts, the Reverend Samuel Cooper said, "We want not, indeed, a special revelation from heaven to teach us that men are born equal and free. These are the plain dictates of the reason and common sense with which the common parent of man has informed the human bosom. It is, however, a satisfaction to observe such everlasting maxims of equity confirmed by the instructions, precepts, and examples given us in the sacred oracles, i.e., the Bible, that they come from him who hath made one blood all nations to dwell upon the face of the earth." For Cooper, reason and revelation agree on the truth of human equality, the first principle of political justice. Alexander Hamilton once wrote, "The sacred rights of mankind are not to be rummaged for among old parchments or musty records. They are written, as with the sunbeam in the whole volume of human nature, by the hand of the divinity itself, can never be erased or obscured by mortal power. One does not have to read the Bible to understand this luminous truth. Christian faith and human reason both teach the same lesson. All men are created equal in this respect, and in this respect alone. The fundamental principles of the American founding may rightly be said to be the principles of Christianity. Never before in history shows convincingly that Christian writers before, during, and after the Reformation supported many of the ideas that led to the American founding. However, this does not permit us to conclude that human reason, unassisted by faith, had nothing to do with the American founding. This is perhaps the cardinal weakness of Never Before in History. In its effort to remind us of the role of Christianity in the founding, it does not discuss the philosophical Enlightenment foundations of America in the depth that they merit. Nevertheless, this book is a welcome ally to the battle to reclaim the noble heritage that our founders have bequeathed to us. Their heritage has been covered over, denied, and denounced for too long. Never before in history shows without a doubt that the authentic legacy of the founding deserves our full and unhesitating loyalty. Thomas G. West, author of Vindicating the Founders. Preface. American history is a required course for high school students throughout the United States. Perhaps more than any other factor, this course shapes our understanding of American history and expresses who we are as a nation. Since America has become increasingly diverse in its culture, ethnic, and religious makeup, many American history teachers and textbook authors now adapt their presentation of American history to the cultural shift. Consequently, early American history is increasingly taught as history of diversity. There is no question that many different cultural factors contributed to the development of the United States. Historians have done an excellent job highlighting their contributions. The emphasis on being inclusive, however, has led to instances of revision to the point, in some cases, of a disregard for historical accuracy. Nowhere has the revision of historical data been more pronounced than the place of religion in early America. A century ago, early American history was widely seen as inseparable from the history of religion in America. Students in the past were taught that Christianity was pivotal in the formation of the Republic. It is now widely assumed that religion played a minimal role in forming America's founding ideals. America's founders, it is said, consciously rejected religious principles and borrowed their best ideas about law and politics from the ancient Greeks and Romans, in addition to Renaissance and Enlightenment philosophers. This view is common throughout most history books today. Although Greek, Roman, Renaissance, and Enlightenment sources were important, some their influences have been overemphasized while the influence of religion has been seriously understated. It is an overstatement to say that American history is synonymous with the history of Christianity in America, but it is more serious understatement still to say that it was simply one of the multitude of equal influences upon our founding. Religion and the great awakenings of the 18th and 19th centuries were central and pervasive forces in the early development of America. The political principles enshrined in our founding documents can be directly traced to the worldview that informed the founders' thinkings and beliefs. Indeed, the aim of this book is to show that connection. If Christianity was so prominent in American history, why is it downplayed or largely ignored in American history courses? Primarily, this is because of the widespread suspicion against mixing public education with religion, a suspicion so deep that it exerts great control over the way American history is presented. Teachers and school officials feel comfortably acknowledge the explicitly Christian character of American history. What will students of other faiths think? What will their parents think? Will we get complaints? These questions just when many educators are under pressure to affirm the de-enfranchised group within society. Although the impulse to include as many factors as possible in the founding of the United States is commendable, its effect has been to distort history. As a result, most high school students leave their American history course with the sense that religious faith had only a peripheral influence upon our founding. Once, however, we allow the fact of our past their proper priority, regardless of current social and political pressures, it becomes clear that the faith that compelled the Puritans, Quakers, and others to seek a new land, this faith pervades our nation, both in splendor and its tragedy. This is not to say that the current textbooks are silent about influence of Christianity on the early development of America. Most textbooks acknowledge that the Pilgrims and Puritans were devout believers in God. Most acknowledge that there was a religious revival in the 1740s across the colonies called the Great Awakening. Many acknowledge some role of Christianity within education. Many textbooks concede that the colonists and founders were members of Protestant churches, but then they claim that the political ideas the founders embraced came primarily from non Christian sources, like the ancient Greeks, Renaissance philosophers. Particularly egregious is the claim that George Washington's conviction of God's providential connection to his people was a mere facet of deism. This text will challenge such claims by offering compelling evidence that the key principles and ideals of the founding of this nation were, in fact, overtly Christian. For example, George Washington's letters reveal a man of genuine Christian faith, and important and valued ideals such as the separation of church and state, inalienable rights, not argued that to be an American one must be Christian. Any such claim utterly in this land, including religious freedom, are the result of a worldview deeply rooted in Christian faith. Freedom of religion is the offspring of religion. In addition to simple ignorance of historical fact, a narrowing conception of Christianity also contributes to the assumption that the founders' faith was of minimal relevance to the great events of their time. During the 20th century, Christianity came to be increasingly defined as a personal subjective faith unconnected to reason and science, a faith that focuses on one's inner life and leaves the word to itself. While this concept may arguably characterize the faith practice of specific groups, although it would be anathema to others, it is one total foreign and unconceivable to 18th century religious practices. In the American colonies, religion permeated every aspect of life, impacting the colonies' educational philosophy, their love for science, their understanding of law and rights. Their faith was indispensable in the founding of our nation. This is not to suggest that secular influences played no role, but it is to suggest that Christianity wasn't just one more vendor in the marketplace of ideas. Rather, it underlines the principles and ideals of most Americans, Christian or not, continue to hold dear. Historical accuracy, not religious bias, demands that American history courses make this point clearly. The American roots of our nation are historically evident, logically compelling, and easily researchable. The aim of this textbook is to show how the faith of founders shaped the political, social, theological, and philosophical context of America's founding.